Sure. Yeah.
Hello, good evening. Erev Tov to everyone joining as you come in. Please let us know when you're here, who you are, where you're coming in from. Haven't had a webinar in a while. I haven't feel like I haven't hosted one of these in quite a while. So good to see everybody that's joining. I assume our chat feature is working and can let us know where you're coming in from. Good evening to everybody, or good afternoon, or good morning, based on where you are. Um, I'm Jay Shofet from Chevra Laganat Teva, SPNI, coming to you from Tel Aviv. And we have a really interesting webinar tonight. It was actually set up by our colleague David Amichai, who is, like I am, very enchanted by the topic tonight. And our little nature museum in the north, you'll hear all about. And well, good evening from Wales. Way to go. That's practically where Lawrence is from. Lawrence is doing back office tonight. David is in Millowham, unfortunately, or fortunately. I think he's going on about 6 weeks now. So it's really unfortunate he couldn't be here because he's set up this webinar with Sar Nudel, who's the curator of the museum, and we'll introduce them and get to that in just a minute. Meanwhile, just setting everything up and excited to see everybody from Wales and LA and Malaya Dumim. Welcome everyone. Bruchim habayim. Let's hope for a quiet night. Uh, we've actually had a power outage here or two recently, probably unrelated to everything else that's going on. I think was it maybe even yesterday there was a siren during the day. Yesterday, the day before, I don't know. Every once in a while. I'm not sure where Sar lives. Haven't figured that out yet. Sar, you're with us here. You feel free to join in. Where do you live? Where are you coming
Yeah,
to us
I
from?
live in Haifa, and I'm not an evacuee, but of course the museum had been closed since the start of the war, since the October the 7th.
Right, right. Yep. So yeah, Haifa's been the whole north. In the last 2, 3 months, things have
Yes.
changed.
Mhm.
First 7, 8 months, 10 months. Tel Aviv had a very sporadic attack in the north, and the north was also fairly sporadic below the sort of 10, 20 kilometer zone. But it's been a different story the last month and a half, 2 months. Yeah, so wow, okay, everybody, people still coming in, close to 40 participants, and really glad to see everybody here from Philly and from wherever you are. It's a I don't know if it's been a quiet news day or not. I literally haven't heard news all day. Sorry, have you anything we should all know about that happened in the last few hours in Israel? People are waking
We
up on
had
the West Coast.
we had a siren about 2 hours ago. There was a suspicious aircraft, like a drone, something like that.
Right.
But I haven't heard anything more.
Wow. So do you happen to be coming to us from your safe room?
No, actually, I don't have a safe room.
Aha. Okay.
My apartment is too old for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Apartments built since 1992 after the Gulf War all are required to have safe rooms,
Mhm.
but anything before that. Yeah. So do you go into a stairwell or?
We have a walk-in closet, a wardrobe, and it's a small room within a larger
Right.
room. So it's
Right.
supposed to
Right.
be safer, not
That
safest, but safer.
what floor are you on?
Pardon? Sorry.
Are you a ground floor? What floor?
No, I'm actually penthouse 5 stories high.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay, well,
The
so
good thing that I can occasionally see the explosions from the north border.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
you should be in your closet, not watching them. But yeah,
Well,
I know when there's not a siren, it's exciting.
it depends on the zone. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're very specific,
Mhm.
the home front command on the zones.
Yeah.
Even in Tel Aviv is divided into two or three different zones, three
Mm.
or four different zones, I think. So
Mm.
sometimes we like hear missiles and bombs and
Yeah.
interceptions, but we don't have to
We
run
have
down to the basement in
we
the
actually
office.
have a very good bomb shelter, the old school shelter, but since it's 5 levels below, we don't have time.
Right, exactly. Right,
I checked it on the watch, and it usually takes between 20 to 40 seconds.
right, right. Yeah, almost everybody hears the interceptions before they get in the safe room
Yep.
if you're in the north.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you have one, or if I mean, if a
Hmm.
shelter, if you have to go to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, welcome everybody. I think we're going to get going here. We've been chatting already with Sarnudel. Welcome everybody from hither and yon. Um, and Thank you, Sar, for being here. Thank you, Lawrence, for back office tonight from your home in Modi'in. So I'll just preface this by saying, if there is a siren, I mean, we might not hear it on the screen, but if Sar gets up to run to his closet, or I get up to run across the hall to my safe room, uh, we live in a place that's only about 15 years old, so we have one. And I think, we'll just have to take a few minute break. And I don't know about you, Sar, but yeah, we're crossing our fingers that's not going to happen. But if so, we'll be back 10 minutes later. And if Lawrence has to run, maybe it just keeps the computer running and we're all okay. So anyway, that's the crazy reality we live in. And thank God, Sar, I don't know if you feel this way, that we work for the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel so that we have a really important distraction from everything else that's going on somehow. At least that's how I feel. I mean, it's not a distraction. So much of what we do is connected to the war and because of the war in terms of getting people out to nature. And of course, you're dealing daily with the museum being closed. And I
Hmm.
don't know what you've been doing actually all year, but I'm interested to hear it. Anyway, I'm Jay Shofet. Lawrence Casimir is doing back office for David Amichai, who's doing his reserve duty in the north. I think he's going on close to 6 weeks now, but he's also been doing volunteer Shabbatot on and off from the beginning of the war in his unit. They sort of have a volunteer list for people to replace the reserve duty soldiers who are there for a long time. But now this was his turn. I think he's been in for over a month, and we've been muddling through in the headquarters of SPNI. But I know our staff has been on reserve duty all over the country for staff from all over the country, and we've been making do with all kinds of things. And I am excited to hear because I haven't been. I was in Haifa once in the last few months and last year, I think, and nothing north of that. So I'm curious to know what's going on. I'll tell you my story is I visited Bedu Sishkin, I think when I first started working in the Chevra 10 years ago with the director then, who's no longer here. Um, uh, but didn't, we just had a nice chat, had a nice tour. It's a beautiful little museum. And then it was only a year or two later that I met SAR and realized that, wow, we actually have a cure. We don't only have this incredible little Nina, like a pearl of a nature museum in the far north of Israel, right on the Lebanese border in Kibbutz Dan. But we actually have a curator, a professional curator of this museum. It's not just something we inherited and we run it. We take it very, very seriously. It's a very interesting cultural institution in Israel in general, certainly in northern Israel. SAR is a curator by profession. I believe he comes to us from the Maritime Museum in Haifa,
Hmm.
where he worked on that, which is also, by the way, a fascinating museum. Um, and it's great to have you with us today, Sar. It's great that we can expose to our supporters in Israel and around the world this very special place that we run and advance. And happy to hear all about it and how Bedu Sishkin, our nature museum on Kibbutz Dan in the north, is advancing our goals of nature protection and getting introducing people from all over Israel and all over the world to nature protection and to our work, and especially in preserving the lost and endangered nature of that very special part of Israel in the Hula Valley and north of the Hula Valley. So, Sarah, thank you very much for being with us. And, we'll be back. If you have questions, you can write them in the Q&A feature or wait till it's over and write them then. We'll take some questions for the last 10, 15 minutes. And Sarah, thank you very much. Looking forward to hearing it.
Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here and give you this webinar. And I will start off with Jay's question of what the hell I'm doing today at the Chevra. And this is what I do. And I'm having this kind of this webinar, or I'm giving it actually as a physical lecture to whatever establishment that will accept me as a free speaker on the behalf of the SPNI. Was making cooperation with other establishments all over Israel. And since, well, I'm on a paycheck from the SPNI, I'm feeling obligated to do it, and it's okay. And I will go wherever and whenever I'm asked to. And I'm giving actually this lecture again on Thursday to one of the largest authorities in Israel. But without further ado, I would like to start with the story of Bet Ussishkin. And you have on the background on your screen the photograph of the facade of the museum. And you can already see that it is a kind of, I would say, weird architectural structure, which supposed to merge with the surroundings a little bit. Naturally, we don't have the actual point of view, and we're not on the kibbutz, we're not physically there, so it's hard to see it. But try to believe me that it is actually true. Now, the slopes of the roof try to mimic the slopes of Mount Hermon, and if you look carefully through the central arch over here, you can see the actual slopes of Mount Hermon. Now, when this building was designed by mega architecture Leopold Krakower, who was very famous during the 30s and 40s in the Middle East. He was thinking about the surrounding, the nature, and he designed the way into the museum, the staircase as an homage to the old temples of knowledge from Western Europe, and the arch as part of giving way to the nature, without thinking that 20, 25 years later, Mount Hermon will become part of Israel. And unfortunately, he did not manage to see the building alive, because this was the last project of Krakower before his demise in 1950. Now, so I would say the reality in very early state of Israel in the early 50s was looking for new projects in big magnitude, like national projects. And I brought you a map here that it will be easy to comprehend the geography of the region. And as I said before, I live in Haifa, which is here. This is the Bay of Haifa. Tel Aviv is approximately here. Jerusalem is here, okay? And this is the rectangle that is enlarged from here. Disregard the political parts of the map, okay? Golan Heights is part of Israel, as you know, from 1967, and it's a major part of our story of the museum. The red spot here marks the location of Kibbutz Dan. And we had a very nice saying, I think it's a verse from a song, from a poem, that says that the entire state of Israel, or the country of Israel, is laid between Dan and Eilat. And this is before 1967, because what happened after 1967, of course, we took the Golan Heights, and now we have some places that are even farther to the north than except from Dan. And this is also not exactly true, because the Moshava settlement of Metula is right over here. Okay, Metula is over here, and Metula had lands in Lebanon that were being crafted by the farmers of Metula, but this is entire different story. So in regular times, I'm working in Dan, and I have to travel 2 hours on each direction. So I don't go there every day. It's too hard. So I'm going for 2 days. I'm sleeping over in the region, and I return home the day after. And we can see that this also sits on the sources, one of the three sources of the Jordan River, which starts, each of them starts on the border, more or less, and flow in the middle of the Great Rift, the Great Afro-Syrian Rift that forms the natural boundary between the Golan Heights, between Syria and southern to that Jordan and the land of Israel, and so on into the Gulf of Eilat, and the rift continues way south into the equator. Now, many years ago, we had the Hula Lake. I'm sure that all of you knows a little bit about the geography in Israel and the Sea of Galilee, but some people are not aware that before the 50s, we had a farther lake, which was a little bit north to the Sea of Galilee, which was called the Hula. And it had several names, but the common name is Hula, and it was a body of water which was pretty large. I think that about quarter from the size of the Sea of Galilee in its peak days during winter, because it was fed from water from the Jordan, from the sources of the Jordan, and some other streams that flow from both sides of the rift, from the Golan Heights and from the Upper Galilee. And you can see here two very nice photos of the lake itself. It was divided into a body of water, of open water, and northern to the body of water there was the swamp with basically a big jungle. And even more to the north, there was the seasonal swamp, the marsh, where it was very muddy during winter. And even today, it's very hard to walk there during winter because the soil is so thick and dense. So you will sink immediately to your knees or something like that, maybe even more. Regardless to say, you cannot travel there with a car unless it's on a paved road, not on the fields. And we talked about the I would say the national effort of making projects to form the new nation, to forge the new nation of Israel. And the first project was the drainage of the Hula Lake. We're not going to the entire history of this procedure, what were the reasons and what were the outcomes. But I have to speak a little bit about it because it's intertwined with the establishment of the SPNI and the end of Bet Osischkin, which back then was still not part of the SPNI. You can see here two different maps. The one on the left is British from the very early 20th century, and the one on the right is Israeli, and it depicts the lake itself with the swamp, with the marsh, and what happened later after the drainage. You can see the lines over here depicts the current water canals that drive the water out of the sources and prevents them from being accumulated in the place that was originally the place of the lake over here. The main reason was to create land for agriculture. I remind you the year was about 1950, 1951. And the young state of Israel wanted some more land for agriculture, to develop land, to develop all kinds of places and industry and new settlements. you have to also to remember that this is the time of the Great Aliyah after the establishment of the state, and we had to establish new settlements to just to have place for all those newcomers. And one of them, of course, was Kiryat Shmona, which was back then a very new city instead of a small Arab town that was evacuated in 1948. And there was a big need for places of workplaces for all those people. So the big effort of the drainage was also to give work for all those people. And naturally, it didn't take short period of time. It took about, I think, 7 years from the beginning, 1951 to the end of 1957, early 1958. And that was about it. So it was in several phases. And what happened after the finish, that all this entire big land, I don't remember the amount in hectares or dunams, but it is very, very large. So it gave a lot of new land for all the settlements around them. Either if there's kibbutzim or moshavim or moshavot, like Yesod HaMa'ala, that was established on the banks of the lake with a pier in the late 19th century, and they all of a sudden found itself without the lake. The pier still exists, and but it gave a lot of land for agriculture. What it did was messing with nature, and even back then, and we're speaking about 1950s, there were several people in the Israeli society that were concerned about what is going to happen to all the rare animals, birds, mammals, and fish, and all kinds of, you know, kind of animals that coexisted in this large area. And thus, there was a big movement among society. And this movement created two things. One of them was the establishment of the Nature Reserve Authority, and the first nature reserve in Israel. And you can see here the green line that represents the current place of what remained from the big lake, which is today the Chula Nature Reserve. The second was the establishment of the SPNI, because this was the direct reason for the establishment of the society. We have here a kind of current photo. I think it was from 2020, which was a very good winter. And we can see that it's hard to fight nature. This is the exact place of the lake. It's the northern part of the lake. And we can see that the lake tries to claim itself back. And what happened during the 90s is establishment of a new northern part of the lake, which is separated from the Chula Nature Reserve, and it belongs to another body, which is the JNF, the Kakal. Okay, so the place of Kakal is approximately here, if I remember it's right. And on the background, we can see the Golan Heights, and even with some snow, which is hard to tell because of the cover of the clouds. But believe me, there is a lot of snow over here because, as I said, 2020 was a very good year. In the meantime, there was a peculiar guy in Kibbutz Dan who was very concerned about the nature and the surrounding and what happens to the nature and to the lake. And he strived to open a museum that was, on the first place, was acknowledged as was not declared as a museum on the first hand, but as an establishment for research and collecting of nature and history in the Chula Valley. And the guy, we can see him on the right, Elimelech Horowitz. He was the carpenter of Kibbutz Dan, but carpenter is just one of the things he did because he was a self-taught person. He spoke if I remember correctly, about 8 languages fluently, and what he needed, he could teach himself. And he was a very avid researcher of whatever he thought was interesting on the spot. So he knew very well biology, zoology, botany, geology, geography. He was a very, very good pioneer and trailblazer, and he knew the surrounding as the palm of his hand. And usually, you just need one meshuga like Elimelech to establish this the place, and he went like a nut from one bureau to another, looking for funding because early 1950s, and the kibbutz there was no money, and he managed to lit the interest of the JNF, and they promised him funding to establish the museum, and they just asked him for one thing, is to name the place after the old head of the JNF, the late Menachem Mendel Ussishkin, that you can see on the left. And Ussishkin was an interesting character for himself, but we're not going to talk about him today because naturally we don't have enough time. And believe me, to talk about Ussishkin, look up for him on Google. There's a lot of things to read and to know about him.
Give us a quick one sentence. Who was the guy? He was a big Zionist.
He was a very important politician before the establishment of the state. I mean, he died in 1940. That's 8 years before declaration of the state. But he, as I said, he was the head of the chairman of the JNF. But way before that, he was the head of what is called, I try to translate the term now from Hebrew to English, the Israeli church. Now, it's not a church in meaning of Christianity. It's a church as a congregation. And it was I think the first body of people before the Histadrut and before this was the first effort to control and rule the Jewish population in the land of Israel. So he was the first effort, and some historians don't like the character, but some do. But I think he did a lot of important things historically, meaning, and one of them, which I always quote, he was the first one to give the right of election to women, and this was in, I think, 1912, something like that. The period was more or less like the suffragistics in Great Britain, and I don't think there is a connection between them. And he was ahead of his time. So in the meaning of historically perspective, it was very important. So we decided after long years that his name was forgotten from the museum. I'm just giving a little bit head start. That it was time to regain his name and just to bring him up again to the common knowledge. So I'm going back to the story, and our friend Elimelech managed to bring funds and professionals. Of course, he managed to get Leopold Krakower as the architect of the place. And what you can see here, if you just try to remember the first image of the museum, how it looks today, it's only half. And this is the day of opening, the grand gala opening of the museum. People from all over Israel came. It was a very festive occasion. And the museum was just in one wing. Today we have two, with each wing is separated to some sub wings. And but back then it was just one. And I don't know exactly where was the office of the place, because it's completely different than when it's looking today. But that was the image of the museum in 1955. That was the year that it opened. And 2 years later, Horowitz managed to get some more funding, and they started to build the other wing that we're going to see in a minute. Now, a little bit about the museum itself. As I told you, it was supposed to be an establishment for researching and collecting all things that are concerned with the Hula Valley and the Upper Eastern Galilee, what we call the Etzba HaGalil, or in English, I think it's the panhandle. I'm just trying to imagine the pan, but we have a handle, which is, the finger of the Galilee that is sticking up to the north towards Lebanon. And as I told you, the major donator was the JNF. And the building itself, it was very, very special. And even today, it's kind of I would say, standing in the crowd. There's no crowd in Upper Galilee, but if you walk in the kibbutz is a small village. Okay, small houses. Each house is for one family. We have some factories which are not very large, a lot of vegetation, a lot of forestry around us, and plantations. And the building of the museum, it was at the end of the main street of the kibbutz. So if you were walking along the street of the kibbutz into, I would say, to the most important place in the kibbutz, which is the dining hall, and you were always either facing to or from the museum. And for many years, the museum was part of the kibbutz. It was run by the kibbutz, as you can see in the points that I wrote here. And a lot of cultural happening of the kibbutz were, going in and outside and around the museum to these very days. Of course, not along the war, but it is still a major part of the kibbutz ethos, of Dan's ethos, although it is not part of the kibbutz anymore. And this is something that I'm going to tell you a little bit in a couple of minutes. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the reality of living on the border. I wasn't born on the Lebanese border, but I've been working there for the last 7.5 years, and I feel part of the area almost as a local. I know a lot of people. I know the area. I did some time in Lebanon during my mandatory service in the late 80s. So I'm kind of feeling part of the area. And what we have now is just history that repeats itself, because during the 60s, before, I think even before that, from the 50s, but it became more intense during the early 60s, when we have, as you see here, the war over the water, which is a kind of lesser known war between Israel and Syria. It wasn't a war, an all-out war. I would say a low-intensity war, but it was a war nevertheless. And this was over the trial of Syria to dehydrate Israel from its water source, especially the Hatzbani, which is the bigger source of the Jordan. And it starts in the Ayun Valley in Lebanon. And back then, the borders were a little bit different than today. And Syrians did in Lebanon, as they always did, as they did in 70s and 80s, they did what they wanted. And they started to manipulate and shift the stream of the Hatzbani away from Israel as an offer to dehydrate our water sources. And naturally, Israel couldn't comply with that, and thus we had a long war that lasted about 3 years, with all kinds of hostility from both sides, a small rate of bombing and air raids and shelling and so on and so on. Along this period, the museum itself suffered some hits, and unfortunately, I couldn't not bring I have photos back in the archives of the museums. Everything I show you today is from my own files that I'm bringing home for work. But of course, all of my work lies in the office in Bet Oshishkin, up north in in Dan, and I cannot approach there, and I cannot go. I cannot approach the computer from afar. Hence, I don't have all my sources and images. So just enjoy what I'm showing you today. And unfortunately, I couldn't bring the old photos in black and white of the direct hits that were in the first wing that you saw in the earlier photo. And I even couldn't take photos of the current scars that we have on the outer walls of the museum that I'm going to show you just in a little time. Elimelech Horowitz was, he was a very strict director of the museum. He kept the place ship-shaped, and a long time, a new guy, Yossi Levari, who is still a big name in the espionage in Israel, took over. And this guy had a lot of rights to his name. And he ran the place for 35 years. Now, naturally, what happens to people that are getting older, they're getting tired, and the museum started to decline. And this was the situation until Yossi went to pension in 2015.
Sorry, excuse me. I just want to let you know about 15 minutes left of the presentation, and we really want to see some stuff. So,
all right, okay.
Thanks.
So I'm going.
A lot of history.
I would talk along. Okay. So this is just one part of the reality I want to show you from the 60s. Each kibbutz around in the upper Galilee has its own. It's not a tank. It's an armored tractor for cropping the fields. Remember that in Dan, there was a Syrian outpost, a garrison by the name of Tel Facher, who was also known as the Monster on the Hill. It was a very big garrison that kept bugging the kibbutzniks all along the years until 1967. Hence the reason for making armored tractors. This was a local job. It was not, it's not an original model of Caterpillar. It's just local made by by the locksmiths and metalsmiths, and every kibbutz had its own, like one or two. Dan had two, and we will see the tractor of Dan. This is another photo of Dan from. It's not from the air; it's from the food silo, and we can see the building of the museum still with one wing, and the slopes of Mount Hermon on the background. This is the border. Okay, this is the border that was there until 1967. So you can see the distances are very, very short, and there is no problem for a Syrian soldier to go down, descend the slope, and sit comfortably with a gun, with a rifle, with a machine gun, and just shoot as it wants towards the museum, and of course into the kibbutz. And this is the other wing during its building in 1957. And I think in 1961, it was open to the public. And this is the armored tractor of Dan, as it can be seen today. Today, it's a memorial in the old entrance to the kibbutz. It's a very small vehicle. It's not large. Now, about the building itself, you can see some parts of the architecture, the big arc. Okay, it's a double arc, and as you can remember, we can see from the kibbutz the slopes of Mount Hermon, and believe me, in winter it's a majestic sight when all the Hermon is covered by snow in good winter. The snow starts at 700 or 8,000 meter high, and Mount Hermon is almost 3,000 meters high. So there's a lot of snow, and the vision is really, really nice. Along the years, the entrance was shifted to the other side. This is actually the backside of the museum from the direction of Mount Hermon. But since the modern times and introduction of private vehicles and more buses, the kibbutz felt that it's not going to be appropriate for the parking lot to be inside the kibbutz. So we got another entrance, especially for us, with a parking lot and a special bridge that bridging the gap. Here, there's a water channel that drives water from stream of Dan into the fish ponds of the kibbutz. This was dug during the British Mandate period and became a natural piece of land. And this is our part, and we keep it as natural as we can. And it is actually, it's a living stream with fish, with crabs, with birds, with whatever. And it's a very, very nice place that you can sit and relax. You don't have to go even into the museum. For us, the workers there, it's a gem. It's a really, really small gem of land. And remember this bridge for the plans for the future. And here we can, if you put an effort, you can see the scars of hitting the outer wall of the kibbutz. It's 1 meter thick, over 3 feet, made of stone. So it's just scarred. It didn't penetrate in, but these are the evidences of the 67, 6th of June 1967, the attack on Kibbutz Dan, which was the only time until this year, or until the 2023, that a civilian settlement was attacked in Israel after 48. Some other images of the museum. You can see on the left the stream itself. It's it's a small channel, but temperature is 14 degrees Celsius all year round, and so it's pretty cold, but really, really nice. And inside the museum, the zoological part, which is our gem, our main attraction, holds several dioramas made by Walter Ferguson, among other artists. Walter Ferguson was very famous in the USA as a highly established nature artist, and he made Aliyah to Israel in 1960 and was the head of nature drawing in the University of Tel Aviv for many years. And he was commissioned to make some of the dioramas, especially this one, which is the major one, the view of the Hula. And I talked to his son, David Ferguson. He remembered it as a kid, going back and forth into the kibbutz, and as long as his father was making the dioramas. Some other people were involved also, and we strive to keep them as good as it could be, because this, as I told you before, it's a big attraction, and we are very proud of them. And we also got a very high degree of acknowledgement from the International Committee of Nature Museums worldwide. We are an acknowledged museum, and it's very important for us because we have to work, every year to regain the standards and to be in the same standards that are still demand, and the standards are going higher and higher every period. We have two ways of showing the zoology. One is by dioramas, and the other one is systematically, taxonomically, and this is along the walls surrounding the dioramas. And by itself, it's not they're not the animals they're not standing still, because every one of them try to depict well, of course they're standing still, but the artists try to mimic a natural posture. So they have a background and they have photographs and kind of I would say semi-live display.
Sar, you have to let people know these are actually stuffed animals. You said artist, but I mean these are actually stuffed dead animals, and
Yes.
you need to relate to why we have a whole building full of dead animals.
Well, for me, it's natural to speak about because it's what I do. But it's a natural history museum, so we are expected to have a display of stuffed animals, and we're
Where
very
did we
proud
get
of
them?
it.
How did we get them?
Okay, so there were several ways to get them. One was by hunting, which is hunting for science. We had a special. It's not me. It's way before my time, but the museum had a special permit from the government to hunt. special kinds of animals in special dates on special hours to either male or female for the sake of knowledge, science, and display. And but since it's an agricultural piece of land, and there's a very good connection between the communities, all people around knew that if they're walking on the field and they find a dead animal, they should bring it to the museum for inspection because some of them could be rare. And naturally, this is how we came with some of the stuffed animals that are on display. The first one from 1951 is the pelican. And you can see that the state of preservation is very, very good. We have some other animals that came from various areas, but mostly they were gathered on the close area, like 10, 15 kilometers around the museum. Some other dioramas. Now, along the years, we try to evolve with time, and what we can see here on the left is the nature made by men. These are fish ponds, which are of course not natural, but today, approximately 100 years after the first effort of making fish ponds in the area, this is part of nature, and they have their own ecosystem. And today, in time where fish ponds are not lucrative and some of them are being drained, the SPNI tries to leave them as is without taking care of, because some of them became, as I told you, some part of the local ecosystem, and they have their own small micro ecosystem surrounding the pond itself with all the animals inside and outside. As you understood, the museum started to decline during the 80s and the big crisis of the kibbutzim. And Kibbutz Dan didn't have the money to keep the place running. So they looked for some other bodies, some other establishment that will take over the museum. Hence came the SPNI and took over during the 80s, I think in 1985. But the place remained as it was before. So it was the same people under new management. And the declination was long, but this what happened. As long it was very sought after and a good place for visit for both tourists, hikers, researchers. As we have a very profound archive in the museum, we can just track the documentation. It's okay. It's very fine. But we can see the declination of the place one step after another until the early, or I think not early, until 2015, when the management was replaced. And under the new management, which is Anat Nissim, she is my direct manager, and I joined in 2017. We strive to bring the museum up into the new millennia. And it was very hard in the beginning, but I think we succeeded because during my first year, I just did repairs, and we didn't have even the staff, and we did whatever needed to maintain the museum, even to swipe the floors or to sell tickets at the entrance. We did whatever we needed, and step by step, we managed to bring some people to work with us. And then COVID came, and everything went to hell. But we did manage to elevate the museum step by step. And what I did as a curator is to establish a place for temporary exhibitions, because everything was fixated in time. And the first one, which was also a cooperation with another unit of the SPNI, the Research Station of Birds in Jerusalem, I got a complete exhibition from them. I did a rearrangement of it, and it was on display for a year. And then we did another one, which was completely new as a call out for amateur photographers. The exhibition was about the Israeli gazelle, and I think it was a very big success. And then came COVID, everything stopped. But along the COVID, we managed to do some refurbishing of the old wing, what we used to call the settlement wing, and which displays mainly archaeology from Till Dan. And after the COVID, we still had to regain staff because the people that were not part of the SPNI, they were hourly workers. They didn't want to come back, and we had to find some new people. And it's always the same problem. And we opened again the museum, and again, little by little, we started to make some contacts with all kinds of groups and tour groups and group leaders to bring people back into the museum, and also to get some funds in order to do some new things. As you know, place that does not do new things doesn't have a right to exist anymore in this age. Some of the things that we do is to have a very good connection with Tel Dan Nature Reserve and the researchers and excavators of Tel Dan, because it's still, after 50 years, an open excavation. You can see on the right what is called the Abrahamic Gate or the Bronze Age Gate, which is the oldest arch structure in the world, about 3,800 years old. And we always say that you have to visit the reserve and visit us together. First one or second one, it doesn't matter. And we do a lot of touring along the reserve itself. What you see on the left is just a sketch of the stele that holds the name of the House of David that was found on Tel Dan, and it is believed to be one of the very important archaeological artifacts that ever recovered in Israel along the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unfortunately, Bet Osischkin is too small to hold it, but we have an exact replica that was made by the Israeli Museum, and we show it to the public, not today, of course, but in regular times. Part of the archaeological exhibition. Today it looks a little bit different because we did some renovation on this wing, but you can see the artifacts there. They're showing the path of time along the biblical period, from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age, and then we jump into the 19th century and the establishment of Zionism, into the rehabilitating of the valley and the status of the area today. We divided the wing into two sections: the auditorium that you can see here, when we can let people sit and see all kinds of movies. We have the movie of the museum, it's a very short one, and we can give lecture, and we can let the place for speakers from outside. And this is the grand opening of the last temporal exhibition that I opened on May 2022. And this exhibition, based on really interesting hoard of things that we found by mistake in the archives of the museum. And instead of throwing them away, we decided to make them into a museological treasure. And we just made them into a very nice exhibition. We're going to browse through this exhibition very, very fast.
Well, so Sar, listen, there's about 7 or 8 minutes, so
Yeah, it's okay.
but there's just a question or two that have come up. One of them
Okay.
are there English explanations for most of these exhibits, or
Yes.
are they in Hebrew?
everything has either bilingual, Hebrew and English, or even today we have also in Arabic, which is
Oh,
mandatory by law.
right.
And our future effort is to make everything also in Arabic.
Cool. And just another quick question was asked. Do you know when JNF acquired the land? Was that like do you know when?
Um, I think in 1930s.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Thanks. That pretty much covered the question so far. So
Mhm.
feel free to another 7 minutes or so.
Okay, so we're browsing through the exhibition. It's basically these things were accumulated in the museum because it was part of the educational system in Upper Galilee, and until 1970, the place, our current office, was the past educational laboratory of the museum, where kids from all over the region came to learn science, biology, and botany, and all kinds of things from Elimelech Horowitz, who became the science teacher of the kibbutz. And they bought and accumulated a lot of old school. These are board posters. They're very large, between 1 and 2 meters long. And because it's also an agricultural settlement, there are things to teach about farming, like livestock, teach about malaria, about insects, about cell biology, everything that you can think about in um, both, elementary school and high school biology. Some of the things are two-dimensional, like the posters, and some of them, this is modern approach. This is something that I commissioned um, from a current scientific illustrator, and this is the digital. It's not handmade. It's made on the computer. And some of the artifacts that I show, even the old digital camera of the museum, which is 20 years old, in the by meaning of digital things, it's prehistory. And you can see all kinds of three-dimensional models and aids like binoculars and telescopes that we use today to show the nature to the kids, to the visitors, because we do some things which are how do you say it, proactive. We go outside. We don't leave the visit just inside the museum, because we are part of the kibbutz still, and we are part of the region. See all kinds, even this vacuum machine that's supposed to demonstrate the power of vacuum, and all kinds of laboratory stuff that used to make all kinds of experiments. And something about we have a large collection of microscopes because they were in use. We're still using them. Well, again, not today, but in regular times. We use them microscopes occasionally for demonstrations. And this beautiful brass, this gilded brass microscope on the right was the private property of a person named Shimon Fritz Budenheimer, who was one of the first entomologists, insect researchers in Israel. He was from Germany. He made the Aliyah, was very famous, and actually took part in the establishment of the museum, or one of the scientific advisors. And on his will, he left us his two Zeiss microscopes, which we are very fond of them. And some of the books he wrote, he proposed like 400 different scientific publications. And just want to go into the last things. Things we want to do in the future is refurbishing of the museum, the second wing, We want to close the entrance hall to make it air conditioned, that so we can have kids sitting there, in the middle of the winter where it's pretty cold and we have very strong rains there. We want to build a gallery for art and art nature exhibitions. We have a lot of plans for the future. If you remember the bridge that I showed you in the beginning, one of my babies is to build a blind for people to go there and watch the birds quietly and undisturbedly. And an update from last period is falling of an explosive drone in the parking lot of the museum, about 100 feet from the building itself. It's a kind of, I would say it's a hand of God that let the drone miss the museum, because it did not explode. But I believe that it would have hit the structure itself. It could have penetrated in, or at least to cause some damage. But it crashed in the parking lot without exploding and without making any damage whatsoever. Was taken by the army, by the intelligence, and I'm trying to get it back after they will finish, researching it, in order to put it on display, because it's became part of the history of the museum. And I think this will be all. So
Very nice. Thank you very much.
I'm thanking you all for participating in this webinar, and I hope I got you some interest to
Yeah.
look for, and I hope to see you all in Betosishkin in the future.
Star, listen, before everybody goes, thank you very much. It was amazing. And we invite people to visit once it's possible. There's a question about virtual tours. Maybe we should do a webinar where you just do diorama by diorama, exhibit by exhibit, and give a virtual tour of the museum. Have you done that?
Well, I didn't do it, but it's possible once the war will be over.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's a good point. Yeah.
we need, some experts to do it, to take the video and what's needed. But yeah, of course, why
Right.
not?
That's a good idea, though. Well, once we get back, I keep forgetting it's literally a closed military zone and you just can't even get
Yeah,
close.
still.
Yes, still. Well, soon, hopefully it'll be not that way. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Lawrence and Sar, Kol hakavod, Yasher koach.
Thank
Uh,
you.
we'll be in touch.
You're right.
Everybody, thank you so much. Happy for anybody's support of our work and the museum specifically, and really invite you to come to Israel whenever you can, whenever it's safe, and we'll show you the museum from Dan to Eilat. We will show you very special nature.
Thank you.
Erev Tov, good afternoon from Tel Aviv. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.